You are the only person. There should be more people coming, but there'll be more people coming. Don't worry. But we might as well get started because it is 7:21. So welcome back. You're here all the time, so you obviously know how it is. We're doing more tactics. So if you remember last week, we were doing like pins, forks, skewers, and discovered attacks, stuff like that. But what we're doing today is kind of like how you progress a game if there's not really that many tactics in a game. So have you ever been in a game where you're like, oh, I just randomly move the pieces and you don't really know what to do? Sometimes, yeah. So that's what today's lesson is about. So it's about like, it's called the CCA method, and pretty much like you're going to try and implement that in today's lesson. So I've got some learning objectives. So what the CCA method is checks, captures, attacks, and I'm going to implement these into real life positions. So I'm just going to give you like a bunch of different positions and you can try and implement them into your game. So yeah, just to recap, pretty much when two beginners play against each other, they always the winner is always the person that blunders the less. But as you get better and better at the game, so as you start to get a bit more better, so intermediate, blunders start to become a bit more rarer, and you need to get better at tactics, pretty much. You need to get better at spotting the tactics. And there's loads of different tactics out there, but if you're in a position where the tactics aren't really like visible, I guess, like if you don't really know how to spot them, that's what the CCA method is. Like, how do you find the best move? You try and use the CCA method. And so the CCA method, what it actually is it's like a checklist of things, of moves that you can look out for in any kind of different chess position. So it means checks, captures, and attacks. And the reason why we do this is because checks, captures, and attacks, they're the most forcing moves in a position. So if you check your opponent, they have to move their king, right? That's the most forcing move in the position. Captures also very forcing as well because you probably have to capture back the next move, right? Because you've just taken material they have to take back, right? And attacks are also kind of important as well because, hello again, but attacks are more important as well. Like they're pretty forcing because, you know, you're putting pressure on another person's piece or pawn or whatever it is. So looking at the CCA methods, you got to ask yourself in a position, do I have any checks? Do I have any captures? Do I have any attacks? And that sort of helps you get a plan, pretty much. So if you're ever in a position where you don't really know what to do, just ask yourself checks, captures, attacks, and hopefully you'll be able to hopefully you'll be able to navigate the middle game a lot better. So yeah, just a reminder, like we're gonna talk about the CCA method today, and we're gonna like implement it into a bunch of different positions, and hopefully you guys will try and get better at chess pretty much with the CCA methods. So I've got a bunch of examples for you guys, and I've left this side of the page blank for now. I just want you to tell me, without like trying to calculate the position at all, like just not like thinking 5 moves ahead into the future, like you did last time. Like, look at the position right now and just tell me what's going on. Like, is anyone better? Is there a position? Like, is there a material advantage? What's going on?
White can check the king with knight e6.
Okay. So pretty much what you are looking for is that this king is very weak, right? Because we have the queen next to it and the knight can probably hop in and give the checks. But what I was looking for is that if white made some like random move, let's say they pushed this pawn, for example, like just a waiting move, black has this checkmate over here. So black can move their queen to b2, and that's checkmate on the next move, right? So white needs to find the most forcing moves, pretty much. And I've mentioned it here. So white's down 5 points of material, right? They have, black has an extra rook, whereas white doesn't have an extra rook. So white's down 5 points of material, and they're getting checkmated on the next move. So we need to find the most forcing moves, pretty much. And the most forcing moves can either prevent checkmate, or we can have a checkmate of our own, pretty much. And using the CCA method can help you find it, pretty much. So if we look at this position, we need to try and implement the CCA method. So checks, captures, and attacks. We'll start with checks first. So if we look at this queen, okay, this queen can check the enemy king a bunch of different ways. It can go here, 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 or here. It can go here as well. All of these are, they're checks, right? They're the most forcing moves with the queen. I just want to ask you a question. Are any of these queen checks any good? And why? Okay. So you're saying that it's not a good move to, it's not a good idea to move the king, move the queen?
Black has to move out of checkers. Well, the bad check moves would be if you move to like E8,
Mm-hmm.
the king can just capture the queen right away. So that would catch.
Yeah, exactly. So you were on the right lines in the first place, pretty much. So you were saying that if we move the queen anywhere, like, yes, there are some positions, like, there are some moves where if you move it here, for example, then you lose the queen in one move. So that's obviously a bad move. But stuff like queen d5 or something, it's an okay move, but it's not, like, the best move because the king can move anywhere, pretty much. Like, the king, you need to try and restrict the king's movement, right? And I'd say queen d5 is sort of like the second best move in the position because later on it can stop checkmate, right? So queen d5, the king can move anywhere, and we can bring the queen back to d2, and that stops checkmate because the enemy queen can't go here because we just capture. So technically, queen d5 is kind of an okay move. You'd be able to see queen d5 if you use the CCA method, so look for checks. But it's not the best move because why? Why is it not the best move?
Because check doesn't lead anywhere and you end up losing your queen too.
Yeah, so like I said before, it doesn't really lead anywhere. So even if we do make this move, the king doesn't really, like, it has so many squares it can move to. But the reason why it's not the best move is because we have this knight as well. And I think you mentioned it before, because
Because then you capture the queen when she tries to check.
so knight d3 is a move as well. But remember, we're looking at the CCA method, so we're looking for checks, captures, and attacks. So how can we move this knight so that we follow the CCA methods? Knight e6, that's correct. So if we move the knight e6, where does the king move to?
It has to move to C8.
Moves to c8, and then what? CCA method, look for another check. Yeah, exactly. So you may have noticed that the knight can check the king as well. So not just the queen can check it, but the knight can check it as well. So after knight e6, the only legal move is to move the king to c8, and then we follow it up with queen c7, and that's checkmate, because the king can't move anywhere, because the white queen, will be able to take it, and it's supported by the knight pretty much. And so normally, if you get this kind of position, you may be thinking in your head, oh no, I'm going to get checkmated. You know, if I don't make a good move, then black's going to checkmate me, right? So try and stop and take a minute to think about the CCA methods. Try and figure out what the most forcing moves are. So look for the checks, look for the captures, and look for the attacks. Without the CCA method, you probably wouldn't have seen this knight move over here, and you may have tried to. So as you said before, you may have moved it down here as well. So knight d2, knight d3, and that does stop checkmate, but without the CCA method, you might not have seen this check, and you wouldn't have won the game, right? So that's the importance of the CCA method. You got to always look for checks. You always got to look for captures, and you've got to always look for attacks. So like I mentioned before, like I'm going to give you a bunch of different examples, just like this one as well, and we're going to implement the CCA methods together. So I've got another example. Again, without trying to calculate 5 moves ahead, what's going on in the position? What's black doing, and what does white need to do, pretty much? What's going on in the position? Are any of our pieces being attacked? The bishop, yeah. By the knight. So, yeah, that's correct. The bishop's hanging right now. So, if we make some random waiting move, let's say if we push this pawn, for example, black would take our bishop, and we're down 3 points of material. So we don't want that, okay? That's not a good thing to do. So, what do? CCA methods? Yeah? We got to look for checks, we got to look for captures, and we got to look for attacks. So we'll start with checks. Are there any checks that we can do? Yeah, okay. So queen g4 is check. So, hold on. Yeah, queen g4 is a check. The king has to move to this square, so h8. Are there any more checks after that position? So we've moved the queen here, they've moved here. Are there any checks? Bishop f6. Yes, that is correct. So, as we mentioned before, so the bishop is hanging, so we need to try and implement the CCA methods. And we realized that there's check with the queen, so we move to g4. The king has to move here, and we can realize that there's a check and a capture at the same time if we play the move bishop f6. And that is checkmate as well. So another really good example of the CCA methods. If you hadn't used the CCA method, you might have thought, oh, my bishop's hanging, so I need to probably defend it with a rook, for example, or there's a free pawn, so I capture the free pawn, right? But you got to always look for the most forcing moves, right? And that's the power of the CCA methods, right? And without it, you may have just, as I said before, you probably would have just captured it without the check first, and black probably would have been able to escape somehow, and it wouldn't have been checkmate. But because you follow the CCA methods, you would have found this checkmate. This really nice one as well. So, I've got another example for you guys. What is going on in this position? Think about the material for white and the material for black as well. So is white up or down material compared to black? Sorry? Up two? So who is up two? Sorry?
White has a rook, where black has a horse.
Yeah, okay. So white has 2 rooks and black only has 1 rook, but white only has 1 bishop compared to black's bishop and 2 knights as well. So
Oh, okay.
technically black is up material as well because they have more of these pieces. So these are called minor pieces. So black has 2 knights for the rook pretty much. Because black doesn't have 1 rook, they have 2 knights to compensate for the rook pretty much. And so not every application of the CCA methods has to end in checkmate, right? So it's an like you can apply it to any chess position pretty much. It doesn't have to be one that ends a checkmate. And so if we use the CCA methods in this position, let's start with checks first. Are there any checks in the position? Yeah, exactly. So what is that move, if you mind me asking? Yep. Exactly. So there is a check in the position. We can capture this pawn over here with check, but it's a terrible move because either the black king can capture it back or the rook can capture it back. So essentially we're giving up a bishop for free, pretty much. So there's no checks in the position. So let's look for captures, right? CCA methods. Checks, captures, and attacks. So are there any captures we can do in the position? We already mentioned that this is a capture as well, but we mentioned before it's not a good move. But is there anything else we can capture in the position? Yeah, there is the knight on c6. So we can capture this knight with our bishop as well. Let's say if black recaptures with their own bishop, is there any more captures we can do in that position? Not immediately, no? Any checks? No? So we move on to the third phase of the CCA method, attacks. So we've done checks, there's no checks in the position after bishop takes and bishop takes back. There's no captures because, right, there's no captures. So we move on to the third one, which is attacks. So can we attack anything in the position, right? So we've got the bishop here, we've got all these pawns over here, we've got the rook here. Is there anything we can do to attack any of these pieces or pawns? And I'll give you a little hint. Think back to last week's lesson. So we've captured this knight. Black is captured back. The bishop is now here. This rook is here. This knight is here. Is there anything we can attack? Yeah. Exactly. So white can capture this. So we mentioned before, there's captures. We can capture like this. But then after that, we have this really nice move, rook d6, as you mentioned. Rook d6. And this is a fork, right? We mentioned before in last week's lesson that a fork is when you attack another piece that also attacks another piece, right? So we're attacking 2 pieces at once. And moving the rook here attacks the bishop and the knight at the same time. And this wins one of the pieces, right? So if black move their bishop, for example, we would take the knight. If they move the knight, we take the bishop. So if we think back to previously over here, if we didn't use the CCA methods, we might have realized that, oh, we're down material. So black's just going to trade off all the pieces. So I'm going to try and keep all the pieces. You might just retreat the bishop, for example. And you might not have looked for the most forcing moves. Even though this move over here, so this capture, is not the best move, it's good that you're looking at it because it's the most forcing move. And that's what I want you guys to do in all your games. Even if it's a really stupid check, right? Still try and look at that move as well because it's the most forcing move and probably the easiest to calculate as well because it involves probably just the king because you're checking the opponent, right? And I've got more examples again. This is my final guided example, I think. Just tell me what's going on here. Is there anything Is there like a hidden tactic, or are we up or down material if we're playing as black?
I think we have the same material.
Same material, okay. Equal, yeah. So it is equal material. So this is the kind of position that you might get in your normal games, pretty much. Like, there's not really much going on, but if we use the CCA methods, you'll reveal a hidden tactic. And it's one that we didn't talk about last week, but we're going to talk about it today. And it's what is something called removal of the defender. If we look at this position with the CCA methods, are there any checks in the position, first of all? Is there any way we can check the white king? Bishop H, sorry? Bishop H1, that is not a check, no. The bishops, they move diagonally, they attack diagonally as well, so bringing this bishop here, it wouldn't attack the king. So queen g3, that is a check. So queen g3, and the knight takes back. So we mentioned that this knight is defending this bishop, right? So technically, if this knight moved out of the way, or if we were able to attack the knight, or even better, if we were able to capture that knight, then we were able to take this bishop for free, right? Does that make sense? So removal of the defender. So we've done the checks. We've realized that this queen can take this bishop. Are there any captures that we can do? Yeah, exactly. So bishop e2, taking the knight, the queen has to take back, and then, are there any more captures? Exactly. So that's what removal of the defender is, pretty much. We've noticed that this queen can take this bishop as well, with a check, so the most forcing move, but it's defended by the knight, right? But if we remove the defender of the bishop with our own bishop, we capture this. So we've looked for a capture with the CCA method, so checks and captures. We've noticed that we can take this knight, and then we take this bishop for free. So, like I say here, we can use the CCA method to find a really nice tactic called removing the defender. They see, if you're playing as black, we can see that there's queen g3, but it's defended by the knight, and we can capture the defender of the g3 bishop with our own bishop, and we capture this knight. So bishop e2. The black bishop removes both the defenders of the white bishop on g3. So what that means is once this bishop moves, this queen kind of defends this bishop again, but white has to capture back this bishop with the queen, right? And then this is a free bishop. It is a bit complicated. Like, this is leaning towards intermediate kind of territory as well, but hopefully, like, that makes sense so far. Like, if you guys have any questions right now, then like, feel free to ask me as well. Yeah, did it make sense? It is a bit complicated. Like I said before, it is quite complicated, but hopefully that makes sense, right? Yeah. So I have a couple more examples as well. So I'm a bit conscious of the time because we don't have that much time left. So I would like try and do a couple of them, and then like we'll skip a couple of them, and then you guys can play against each other and try and implement the CCA methods. So give it a go, the CCA methods. Try and implement the CCA methods to this position. Look for checks, look for captures, and look for attacks. And try and discuss it amongst yourselves as well. There's only, 3 of you here, so you can discuss it together.
take that pawn on A2. Is there a chance?
If you want, you can set it up on the board as well. You can try and figure it out. So remember, you're looking for checks, captures, and attacks.
Yeah, I'll fly. Nice.
Yeah. So walk me through that then. What did you find out?
Pawn D4.
Yep.
Puts the king in check. King can only move to A4.
Yep.
And rook A2 checkmate.
Yeah. Exactly. So pawn here. The king has to move. It only has one square it can move to because it's defended by the knight. So this pawn is defended by the knight. Can't move here because the rook is defending it. So this is the only move. And look for another check. We see that this is a check and a capture at the same time. So it's probably the best move. And it is the best move because it checkmates the opponent's king. So well done. That is really good. So just to confirm, pawn here, king here, and rook checkmate. How about this one? You can try set it up as well. But if you don't feel like it, then you can try and calculate it in your head as well.
It's always easier to just set it up.
Yeah.
What's up to that?
Doesn't really matter.
Fine, yeah.
Yeah, because we just throw that as a.
So look for checks, captures, and attacks.
Go here, resting on the map for some reason. I could block with this. Another check. Yeah. Actually, tell you what. I don't. Sorry, I'm messing this up.
So try and look for the most forcing moves. You're on the right lines, but look for the most forcing moves. So always look for the checks, always look for the captures, and then the attacks. You're on the right lines. What do you guys find?
Got it.
Yeah? What is it?
Queen to A1,
Queen to A1? Yep.
resulting in king to B8.
Yep.
So we go queen to A8.
Queen to A8.
No, sorry, queen to A7.
A7, yep.
So then king has to move to C8,
Yep.
and then we can do queen to A8,
Yep.
and then they'll defend with their bishop to B8.
Yep.
We take bishop B8
Yep.
with our queen,
With the queen, yep.
and then he's done for.
Exactly. Nice. So, just to recap, queen here, queen A1, king has to move. They can block with the queen or the bishop, but it's a terrible move because it hangs the bishop or the queen in one move. King can move over here. We look for another check. So, queen A7, which is a good move as well because we're checking the king. The king has to move to C8. We bring the queen over here to A8 now. The only move that they can do is defend with the bishop. And because we have our own bishop here as well, this is not a threat anymore because we can take the bishop that just moved here with our queen, and it's defended by this bishop in the corner, and that is checkmate. And you see this because you're always looking for checks, you're always looking for captures, you're always looking for attacks as well. So I think you guys were thinking about taking this bishop first as well, or something like that. But again, you've got to always look for all of the checks first, and then all the captures, and then all the attacks. So you got to see the queen, this queen check. You got to look for this queen check as well. This is a bad one because the queen takes back, the black queen takes back. So you got to look for those checks first before you even start calculating this bishop take, the bishop capture pretty much. So you did well. Like, this was a bit more of a difficult one. I think it was like a mate in 3 or mate in 4, whatever it was. But you found it like pretty quickly, I think. So that's really good. We'll do one more, and then you guys can play against each other. Yeah, you can try and set it up as well, and look for checks, captures, and attacks.
First thing is queen to B.
Pilot knight. That's very important.
A4 check.
That's a good one. What am I do? Probably. I guess I didn't decide it correctly. Yeah, that makes sense. So we can take the bishop. Sorry, the knight before that point, because it's protected by our queen. Either that way or with the bishop. I go with the bishop in case they wanted to trade.
Right, so bishop. Yeah, I go with the bishop.
You got it, guys. That was correct.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, just walk me through what you saw, by the way.
So we said queen A4 puts king in check.
Yep.
King has to move somewhere.
Mhm.
Then bishop takes the knight on D4.
Exactly. So, this is a really good example. So we had like a similar position last week as well, where the queen was like over here, and we checked it on this A file, and we won a piece in the center as well. And this is a really good example of a fork again. So we check and we attack the knight at the same time. So check and attack at the same time. So queen a4, the king moves anywhere, and we can either capture with the queen or we can capture with the bishop. I prefer taking it with the queen anyway, but bishop's completely fine as well. So yeah, you guys got it. Well done. I had more examples, but we don't have the time for that. So if you want to look at them like later on, or if you want to look at them in your own free time, then just ask me pretty much. But for now, you guys can pair up against each other and try and implement the CCA methods into your own games pretty much. So try and play a game and just walk through like the CCA methods and try and figure out if you can implement it into your own games. But other than that, thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate, even though it was only two of you, and Charlie, of course, you're present, you have to be here. But thank you all for coming. And next week, we're going to talk about game analysis. So what I want you guys to do is try and bring your own games in. So if you play like a game online or over the board, try and record what the game was, like if you can. Or if you play a game online, then like bring it in and we'll try and analyze it together pretty much. And that'll be the last session of the term as well. So
It's already the term. That's just
yeah,
terms already ending.
yeah, it is. But yeah, thank you guys for coming, and you're welcome to play against each other and try and implement the CCA methods together. But yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Can we have these slides?
It's on YouTube.
The